Tonight, when it gets dark, you will flick on a light without a thought. But press rewind on human history, and for almost all of it, that was impossible. When the sun went down, real darkness came with it, the kind where you cannot see your own hands. For more than 300,000 years, every ancestor you have ever had spent nearly half their life in that darkness. No bulbs, no screens. For most of it, not even a candle. Just the stars, the dark, and a fire if they were lucky. So what did they do with all those hours? The answer is stranger than you think. To understand what they did, you first have to understand the dark itself. We barely have a word for it anymore because we almost never meet it. The darkness your ancestors lived in was total. On a moonless night, under cloud or canopy, you could not see your own body. The world simply switched off. And it stayed off for 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours at a stretch. Add those hours up across a whole life, and our ancestors spent close to half of it in the dark. So they had two enormous problems to solve: how to survive the night, and what to do with all of it. The way they answered both quietly shaped the species we became. The first answer, the one that made everything else possible, was fire. In Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, traces of controlled fire reach back something like 1,000,000 years. And taming fire did far more than keep people warm. It rewrote the night. Picture our ancestors before they had it. Like almost every other animal, when the sun went down, their options collapsed. You found shelter, went still, and waited for light, because moving in the dark meant becoming prey. Our eyes are weak in low light. The things that hunted us saw beautifully. Fire flipped that. A fire throws out a ring of flickering light, and inside that ring you can see, and the things in the dark mostly stay away. For the first time, the night had a safe place inside it. But fire gave our ancestors something even bigger than safety. It gave them time. Before fire, the useful day ended when the sun did. After fire, a few extra hours were suddenly stitched onto the end of it. Warm, lit, guarded hours with nothing urgent left to do. And what humans choose to do with empty, firelit hours, it turns out, can change everything. So what did they do? For a long time, we could only guess. Then an anthropologist named Polly Wiesner went and listened. For years, she recorded the conversations of the Juhwansi people of the Kalahari, who still live much as our ancestors did. And she found a striking split. In the daytime, talk was business. Where to hunt, which plants were ripe, who had wronged whom, the endless practical chatter of staying alive. But after dark, around the fire, the talk transformed, the practical fell away, and in its place came stories. Tales of faraway people, myths of how the world began, songs and jokes, and the lives of the long dead. Those firelight hours were when humans first learned to leave the present behind, and travel together into worlds that did not exist. That circle of light was the first theater, the first school, the first church. Much of what we mean by culture was born inside it. But storytelling is only half of what the night held, because there was something else our ancestors did in the dark, something so strange to modern ears that scholars refused to believe it for years. They did not sleep the way you sleep. For most of human history, people did not sleep the night in one solid block. They slept in two. We know this thanks to a historian named Roger E. Kirch, who spent 16 years buried in old documents, diaries, court records, medical guides, prayers, even old poetry. And scattered across centuries of them, more than 500 times, he kept finding the same two casual phrases: first sleep and second sleep. The pattern was remarkably consistent. People went to bed not long after dark and slept for around 4 hours. Then, near the middle of the night, they woke, not by accident. This was simply what bodies did. They stayed awake an hour or two and then sank into a second sleep until morning. For thousands of years across the world, this was just the shape of a night. And that gap in the middle, the hour or two between the two sleeps, was its own quiet world. People even had a name for it. They called it the watch, and they filled it with the soft, unhurried things there is never time for in daylight. They talked in low voices. They tended the fire. They prayed. They turned their dreams over while they were still warm. One old medical guide even told couples this was the finest hour to make love. Others just lay there, awake and calm, letting their minds drift. It was not wasted time. It may have been some of the most peaceful time a person ever had. For a long while, you could have waved all this away as a quirk of history, a habit people kept, not something written into us. Then, in 1992, a scientist named Thomas Wehr tested it. He took a group of ordinary modern people and stripped the artificial light out of their nights. For a full month, they spent 14 hours in darkness each night, roughly what our ancestors had once the fire burned low. And within a few weeks, something remarkable happened. Their sleep quietly split in two: 4 hours, then a stretch of wakefulness, then 4 more. Nobody had ask them to. Their bodies simply remembered how. It was as if our long, single sleep had only ever been painted over an older pattern. Once the dark lasted long enough, the old one bled back through. And there was more. When Vare looked at that wakeful gap, he found their brains flooded with a hormone tied to deep calm, the kind that rises in meditation. They did not describe lying there bored or anxious, but a strange, serene, almost meditative peace, a state most of us have quite simply never felt. So where did it all go? The fires, the two sleeps, the quiet watch? The answer is almost embarrassingly simple. We turned on the lights. It happened slowly, and then all at once. In the 1600s, cities began hanging lamps in their streets. Paris led the way, lit on the orders of a king who wanted fewer crimes in the dark. Candles grew cheaper. Gas lamps arrived in the 1800s. And then, in 1879, Edison made the electric bulb something an ordinary person could own. Within a generation or two, a darkness our species had lived inside for 300,000 years was simply switched off. It is easy to forget how feared that darkness once was. Our word curfew comes from an old French phrase, couvre-feu, meaning cover the fire. In medieval towns, a bell would ring at night and everyone would smother their flames and retreat indoors. Night belonged to danger, to thieves, to spirits. In some places, walking the streets after dark without a lantern could get you arrested. For most of history, the night was something to survive, not to use. So when we finally beat it back with light, it felt like nothing but progress. We just never noticed the bill. Because your body never got the message that the war on darkness was won. To the ancient machinery in your eyes and brain, light still means one thing: daytime. When a bulb, or worse, the blue glow of a screen, hits your eyes at 11 at night, your brain reads it as sunshine. It holds back the melatonin that should be pulling you toward sleep. Your rest comes later, and lighter, and more broken. A rhythm tuned over millions of years gets quietly scrambled, night after night, and we know how thin our hold on it is. Take people camping for a single week, with nothing but sunlight and firelight, and their bodies reset. Their melatonin slides almost 2 hours earlier, back toward the sunset it was always meant to follow. 1 week is all it takes for hundreds of thousands of years to come flooding back. We did not just move our bedtime. We erased a whole chapter of the human night, that calm, reflective hour in the dark, and most of us have no idea it was ever ours to lose. Which leaves one last strange thought. Think about what happens when you wake at 3 in the morning and cannot fall back to sleep. You lie there in the dark, tense, frustrated, certain that something in you is broken. We even have a word for it: insomnia, a disorder, to be medicated and fixed. But what if sometimes it is not? What if waking in the deep middle of the night is not a malfunction at all, but a memory? The faint return of a rhythm your body kept for 10,000 generations, surfacing in a world that no longer leaves any room for it. Maybe the thing we treat as broken is, in truth, one of the oldest and most natural things a human body knows how to do. For almost all of human history, the night was not an absence. It was a second life. It held the fire and the stories told around it that built whole cultures. It held 2 sleeps, cradling a quiet, almost sacred hour of reflection in between. And it held a sky so thick with stars that the Milky Way was not something you drove for hours to glimpse. It was simply the ceiling over every sleeping head. We poured light into all of it and called it progress. In most ways, it truly was. But we lost something along the way that we never even knew we had. So the next time you wake in the dark, and the house is silent, and your mind is strangely clear, try not to reach for the light, or the phone, or the worry. Just lie there a while. Let the old rhythm have you. You are not broken, and you are not alone. You are only remembering the night your ancestors knew for 300,000 years. The one we traded away for a switch on the wall, and somehow forgot we ever had.